Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing good today. The title of this topic of this video is why we need collectivism and collective action in societies. Okay, let me begin this video by discussing what the term individuality means. Individuality is the quality of character of a particular person or a thing, usually a particular person, sometimes it can also be a thing, that distinguishes them from others of the same kind, make them unique and different. So they have a different value proposition and unique value proposition. They are also different from other people or other objects in the class. What is individualism? Individual is something slightly different. Okay, and individualism represents one kind of social cultural perspective and is often defined in contrast with other perspectives such as communitarianism, collectivism, and corporatism. Okay, uh, individualism is a realization of one's own goals or objectives. Individualists value independence and self-reliance and advocate that the interests of the individual should gain precedence over other interests in social group or the state. Individualists oppose external influence upon one's own interests by society or institutions such as the government. Okay, individualism makes individualism as the primary focus and center of attraction. It begins with the fundamental premise that human individualism is of primary importance in the struggle for liberation. What are differences between individuality and individualism? Individuality refers to the unique qualities that make each person distinct, while individualism is a broader concept encompassing the values and beliefs that prioritize individual rights and autonomy. Individuality focuses on the uniqueness of the individual's character, experiences, and beliefs. However, individualism emphasizes the importance of individual freedom and self reliance within society. Okay, the idea of individualism was greatly developed, fostered, and nourished in the West, particularly in the USA. Okay, what is American individualism? Individualism is a defining feature and characteristic of most or all facets or walks of American public life. It is a hallmark and a defining characteristic and feature of American culture. Its influence is pervasive today, with most parties wanting to expand personal freedom and defend individual rights against unwanted intrusion. Okay, these could be from big government, big corporation, and intolerant majorities. The roots of American individualism can be traced back to the Jacksonian era. Okay, this is named after an old American president, Andrew Jackson. Okay, this is approximately between 1820 to 1850. I think 1828 to 1850 more specifically. Much work on this has been done by Alex Zakaras. Alex Zakaras is a professor of political science at the University of Vermont in the USA. Okay. Then what exactly is collectivism? Collectivism is the practice or principle of giving a group priority over each individual in it. It is contrasted with individualism. It is, in most respects, it's the opposite. It is a political or economic theory advocating collective control, especially over production and distribution. It is marked by emphasis on collective rather than individual action or identity. It emphasizes collective good over individual good. We had also proposed individual versus collective orientation as one of the fundamental collective orientations in the one of the fundamental cultural orientations in the previous paper. I've written about seven different types of cultural orientation. Hofstede and others also have come with similar concepts. Okay, bureaucratic collectivism is another important concept. It was prevalent in the USSR under Joseph Stalin, dictator Joseph Stalin. It was marked by totalitarianism and authoritarianism. Okay, what is communitarianism? Communitarianism is a philosophy that emphasizes the connection between the individual and the community. Its overriding philosophy is based on the belief that a person's social identity and personality are largely molded by community relationship. Only a small degree of emphasis is placed on individualism. Okay, to large extent, community interests are promoted and propagated. What is collective action? Collective action refers to any situation where multiple individuals cooperate to achieve a common goal or benefit, also known as a collective good. This can involve social or political action and is often used in contexts such as group project, community initiatives, or even political movements. The aspects of collective action include cooperation, common good. It can also take on very different diverse forms such as simple collaborations or large-scale social movements. It is also uh, it also includes overcoming challenges. You also have communism. Communism is a social, political, philosophical, and economic ideology within the socialist movement, whose goal is the creation of a communist society. This is a socio-economic order centered on common ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange that allocates products in society based on need. The core principles are a classless society, common ownership of resources, abolition of private property, social equality, and it also includes some economic features such as centralized planning, distribution according to need, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. One of the early objectives was the elimination of money. This is never fructified or materialized. Okay. And it also has some social and political features such as one party rule, state control, restrictions on freedom, etc. And the collectivization is also another important concept. The process of organizing an industry or economy under collective ownership and management, often by the government or state rather than individual private ownership. Okay, it involves breaking up individual units of productions like farm into larger, not breaking up, merging units of production like farms to larger shared units, and these are brought under state control. This is associated with socialist ideologies. Okay, one of the objective was to do with private ownership of land and to improve emphasis on production by bringing them to state control. Unfortunately and tragically, exactly the opposite happened when collectivization was largely a failure. Okay, if you see the USSR experience, this was a key part of Stalin's 5 year plans, and there was an exploitation by wealthy farmers who known as kulaks. Stalin wanted to do away with this. However, it led to a drastic fall in productivity, drop in productivity. It led to widespread hardship, famine, and resistance from the peasantry also. Collectivization in China also uh, marked a shift from private to collective agriculture. It occurred in between 1955 and 1958. Okay, and this led to the establishment of communes. Okay, the process aimed to increase agricultural production and was implemented along with a great leap forward to lead to rapid industrialization. However, this led to widespread famine. Okay, the cultural revolution and the great leap forward both were failures. Okay, suppose the claimed advantages of collectivization were increased efficiency, modernization, state control and planning, reduced labor requirements. However, none of these were materialized or realized. The disadvantages of collectivization are forced implementation, loss of individual incentives, social disruption, economic setbacks, lack of expertise, corruption, waste, resistance, and rebellion by farmers and other people, involved people. The reason why I'm telling you all this is we must not fall into the same trap. I'm talking about some kind of collaboration and collective action here to improve society as a whole, and this needs to be done by intellectuals. Okay, you can have different strands of thought, mutually conflicting strands of thought, but it must be within a reasonable and acceptable level of tolerance, acceptable to an acceptable level of degree. This must happen. Okay, so we must have intellectualism. We must have strong and robust intellectualism. This can only happen if there is a desire for collective thought and collective action. And we do have different types of mind orientation I have discussed, such as family orientation, employment or business orientation, individual mind orientation, societal orientation, intellectual or creative orientation, militant orientation, the anarchist or pure man. Okay, and we also have cultural orientation. This is defined at the level of a culture. We have past orientation versus future orientation, inward looking cultures whereas versus outward looking cultures. We also have xenophobic and xenocentric cultures, rigid versus flexible cultures, individualistic versus collective cultures, material versus non-material orientation of cultures, contentment versus innovation, rational orientation versus non-rational orientation. Hofstede also came up with his name is Geert Hofstede. He's a Dutch social psychologist and the professor emeritus of organizational anthropology and international development at Maastricht University in the Netherlands. He has worked extensively on cross-cultural groups and organization. He came up with the hosted model of 6 dimensions of national cultures: power, distance, uncertainty, avoidance, individualism or collectivism, masculinity or femininity, a long or short-term orientations, and intelligence versus restraint. Okay, the needs and requirements of developing countries like India and other developing countries in Africa and South America, I would assume, are somewhat different. This is why I have proposed a slightly different classification without throwing out the baby with the bath water. We also have had an important concept known as the tragedy of commons. Okay, this concept was proposed by Garrett James Hardin, who was an American ecologist and microbiologist. The tragedy of the commons describes a situation where individuals acting in their own self-interest deplete a shared resource, even though it is detrimental to the collective good. Okay, this occurs because each person gains immediate benefit from exploring the resource, while the cost of depletion are shared and delayed. Okay, so we have shared resources here, and we have individual rationality. Person behaves rationally, or sometimes he may behave irrationally. He may act in the interest of the collective good, or sometimes he may have act collective harm the collective interest. They may also have this may also lead to overexploitation and depletion. Okay, always the rule of law must be obeyed and adhered to. Even if you want to change it, it must be done in a structured and a structured fashion, not in an ad hoc fashion. We don't need an impunity, irresponsibility. Success also comes with strings attached. Success comes with responsibility. Doing something good for one's own country, doing something good for the overall global good. We also need to have robust intellectualism in place. This is lacking in India, but I look forward to more and more intellectuals emerging in the next uh, 10, 20 years or so. And they must be non ideologically driven. Intellectualism, of course, is the exercise of the intellect at the expenses of emotions, or hedonism, pleasure seeking are relegated to the background. We need to think about poorer countries, poorer people, poorer societies, how to maximize the human experience, aid to poor countries, okay, and developing bottom-up development models for developing countries. We need public intellectualism. I have also spoken about horizontal collaboration and vertical collaboration. Horizontal collaboration is collaboration among poor countries. Vertical collaboration is a collaboration between poor and rich countries. This usually involves technical transfer. For example, Germany and other countries provided the technical aid to countries such as India who are poorer. We also have concepts of technology transfer, and we also have groups of countries such as G7, G20, BRICS, etc. Collaboration between the global south. There must be some kind of patriotism, love, and respect for one's country, feelings of attachment and commitment to one's country, nation, or political community. However, responsible and restrained patriotism is required. Okay, there is all Samuel Johnson came up with a famous statement: "Patriotism is the refuge of the scoundrels, or patriotism is the refuge of fools." Okay, and this type of bullying, okay, and nationalism that is detrimental to other nations, primarily the one that was seen under Hitler, Mussolini, mainly Hitler, is also not good. Donald Trump is sometimes seen as a bully, so though he was nowhere near Hitler's level. Hitler butchered, I think, millions of Jews. Okay, and if you see nationalism is a strong feeling of pride in and devotions to one nation, often involving a belief in nation superiority and promotion of its interests, and then neglect of promotion uh, of interests of other countries. Sometimes they may try to override the interests of other countries also. This is also not good. It can be manifest as a desire for national independence, a commitment to shared cultural identity, or a focus on national sovereignty. All this is good, but you must not trample over other people's rights. Some amount of free trade is also good. We have seen globalization rise with the rise of the internet also. This happened mostly after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Internet took off after 95, but it was seen to be a fad, but it did not happen. Internet transformed the world along with mobile phones and smartphones. Now, digital currency, artificial intelligence and education are the next big things. They are also going to transform the world. Okay, key elements of nationalism include loyalty and pride, national identity, national interest, self-determination, focus on the nation state, civic nationalism, ethnic nationalism, religious nationalism, revolutionary nationalism, and unfortunately expansionist nationalism. We also have economic nationalism, which is an ideology that prioritizes a country's economic interests and self-sufficiency, often advocating for protectionist policies and domestic control over the economy. It is characterized by favoring state intervention to promote national interests and protect them from foreign competition. often through measures such as tariff subsidies and import quotas. It is sometimes associated with protectionism. We also have intellectual nationalism. This refers to the elevation of national interest by educated individuals who advocate for the development and preservation of national identity and culture. These individuals often play a significant role in shaping national narratives and promoting a sense of collective bargaining. We must promote responsible intellectual nationalism while helping other nations at the same time. Okay, key aspects of intellectual nationalism are advocacy of national interests, shaping national identity, promoting a sense of belonging, intellectual engagement with the people, improving the lot of people in developing countries and other countries. Okay, and nationalism, I think, arose in the 19th century. This led to movements for self-determination in other countries. India also was like some kind of a leader, and many countries followed India's footsteps. So nationalism, of course, has a negative aspect to component two, as seen by Hitler's and Mussolini's overture. Okay, we have discussed that ideology is also very important. We have discussed the definition of ideology many times before. In political science, a political ideology is a certain set of ideals, principles, doctrines, myths, or symbols of a social movement, institution, class, or culture group. And ideologies must be slowly castigated. We must move towards an ideology free world. Intellectuals must push for this. Okay, I have spoken about epistemic authoritarianism and broad and wide ranging thought. We must also get rid of dogma. Dogma is rigid thought or rigid thinking, which is contrast with free thought. Free thought is a philosophical stance that encourages individuals to form opinions and beliefs based on reason, logic, and empirical observation rather than relying on authority, tradition, or religious dogma. This concept arose from Enlightenment ideals and led to the rejection of unquestioned beliefs also, and the critical examination of ideas and reliance on evidence-based reasoning. And free thought includes an emphasis on religion and logic, rejection of authority and dogma, independent thinking, skepticism, though not skeptopathy, focus on empirical observation, etc. We also need different types of people, such as thought leaders, okay, who have visionary leadership skills, strategic skills, and leadership skills. We also need champion, a person who fights for a particular cause or speaks out for to another person in favor of general or a public cause that is worth fighting for and dedicated to fighting for. We need activists, including science activists, intellectual activists, protesters, agitators. Okay. We also need subject matter experts as necessary. We also need influencers as necessary, which are also important. And we, in some, we need collectivism and collective action in societies. Different collections have countries have demonstrated different levels of collective action. For example, in some African countries, we have had solar mamas who have fought for solar energy. Okay, and USA there is a strong anti-Trump movement, and in India, Gandhi fought for the right of Indians in South Africa in the 1890s, and Gandhi also undertook his famous Dundee Salt March in 1930 to protest against the British law. We also had the Ambedkar's Mahat Satyagraha in 1927 in Maharashtra. Okay, so we must not blindly emulate the ideals of the West. We must modify them to suit our own requirements. And we need a strong intellectual class. I've spoken about social cultural groups, social economic groups, intellectual class, entrepreneurial class, etc. We need a small, strong intellectual class in India. And this video, therefore, is a part of a globalization of science movement, naturally, because we don't need to be straitjacketed with Western ideals and the Western mold. We need to be able to think comprehensively, independently, and distinctly, differently from the developed world if necessary. Developing countries can birth and gestate their own paradigms. Thank you very much once again for this video, watching this video. Bye.